Hey, I'd like to report a guy reading a library book under a tree parked in the shade. Something about that doesn't seem right. I wonder if some people have thoughts like this. Hey, the ministry says 75 of the 375 still paid, accounting for propane, for example. Now, I can't work my propane furnace without power of some kind. I could buy something. I could apply for something to buy something that I don't have to plug in somewhere if they don't want to help with solar panels. Something that just provides a tiny bit of power. Now they'll refuse, and in that same uh, category, I'll say, well, my propane tank is, more than 10 years old, which is scary to say because then it's online that I'm not sure if there's a rule specifically for this, but it might be taken away from me, my propane tank, although it's never leaked, and it's been surprising me last year when I found, what, there's propane in it this much, and it's been left by itself for so long, and how long it lasted between a refill that wasn't even empty at the time. So I'm pretty sure it's in good shape, although it looks rusty from having been by the ocean for a long time. But I would say, hey, it's more than 10 years old, and I heard, I'm not sure about propane stuff, but I heard maybe it's not allowed to be refilled, although you can find places that will refill it. Will you pay for a new propane tank? Which again would compensate for how they're making the value of my motorhome go down by not caring about other things that are harmful to my health or to the environment or to the asset of my motorhome, such as radiator or the exhaust components. Now, it's possible again that I would sign an agreement with them. Like if they have a team of specialists of things, then that specialist would say, look, we're willing to pay this, Martin. They would work with me because they would exist with a name as a caseworker. They would say, Martin, that's expensive. Now, after that, are you going to ask for this, this, this? Can we get it inspected somewhere first so that we can come to an agreement of what we would or would not pay in the future? And also, can we make it that maybe you put less mileage on it by helping you select a community and finding a place where you could have a campground at a reasonable rate in the long term? Because, when you stay in like BC parks for 2 weeks, do you know how wonderful it is not to have them move the motorhome or get into a routine where you go for the long walk for the shower? It's cold, there's bugs. You figure out this shower is colder, this shower is way too hot. But it's still fun. It's still a routine. It's still regular every day. And there's like a good sense in that. But then, it approaches the 2 weeks and then you have to go soon. So if they found a campground, even if nobody wants me to volunteer there, if nobody wants me to work for whatever their reasons are, just to have a consistent place, and they would help find this and they would say, okay, we'll agree to this, but you have to stay there for at least 6 months or 12 months. And if you move and, something happens to your motorhome, we're not covering it. Now, that'd be okay with me because it'd be like creating a win-win scenario as if the ministry is looking for, long-term solutions with me. But really, I mean, long-term solutions has never been, what happens with a ministry whose workers survive one day at a time. When I was being trained as a union representative with their union, the BCGEU, I think it's called, do you know how upset they were with me for asking questions and for being curious and for wanting to really learn what I needed to learn to represent my colleagues, in the ECE worker category that use the same union? Do you know that they brought me in an office and they sat me in a chair? This big lady was like, she was between me and the door. Of course, I wasn't intimidated because, it takes somebody with very, very good skill sets here to intimidate me. I've never met anybody like that any time in the last few years that might worry me in this way, like this is a competent person. What if they wish me harm? Well, if they're not competent, they could wish me harm, and there's a limit of how much I'll be intimidated. But so she had like one leg on top of a chair, and she was saying, "Hey, look, we're trying to get through this training, and you seem like too interested about it." Is almost what she was saying. So I spent the rest of the time in this training because there was two different categories in a row I was doing. One was about Well, one was the general one, and one was investigating incidents, I believe. Except that, I've had private investigator training when I was 19 in Quebec, and I had a license in Ontario as well, and I would consider myself somebody with investigator skills. I've worked, as a process server. I've worked as also a collection agency, which it makes me ashamed, but it was only 1 week until I realized we're more the bad guys than the people we're calling. And I could tell you that there was nothing advancing the related skills in that training for the people that were there. So what I did was the rest of the time, I wrote notes about the incompetence and how ridiculous it was. So they saw me write notes. They probably thought, okay, he's not asking a lot of questions right now unless he needs to be sure he understands one concept that we're discussing because, it's a new word in relation to this category or whatever. And he's writing a lot of notes, but I don't think they realized I still have that notepad, that the notes were how incompetent they were and how ridiculous that union was and how dysfunctional and how it's just money laundering. There's no way they can efficiently accomplish their mission statements by being that developmentally disabled in their own industry. So it's pretty sad. Now, is that one of the reasons that the ministry workers have been complaining about their work situation and, the software that they've been given that the province had spent a lot of money on that wasn't better than the one before, and how over time less and less meet with people and less mention their names, because I think they're not supposed to unless maybe you ask in person what their first name is, and less actually can show any kind of compassion or altruism. And, you add that God complex in there, you add survive one day at a time for them, you add the fact that they can't rely on their union to be part of any culture repairing endeavor, and that, they put themselves into debt as the typical addicted consumer, and they think they have to go through this entire career. And the ones that do are the ones that will not have a better retirement compared to the ones that say, hey, there's a lot of turnover here, and now I'm more certain about why. You got to lose a lot of your humanity for these jobs. And it's sad because it doesn't need to be like this, but it turns out that it is. And the only flip of the switch to fix this is to start acting as if we're human. And we've never been human, right? We've never cared to develop the software where we can, each of us, respect each other's human rights in a way that doesn't need to have big debates about it, because it would come to us naturally. And this is most certainly not part of this ministry, and most certainly isn't part of politics or any society that uses monetary paradigms, that has subhuman, even post-education institutions. So it's who you are. I'm documenting this, and it's not about me getting more. But when they say you can apply for this, you can apply for this. Oh, you sure? Because in my experience, yeah, it's not going to go well, and I'm going to get upset with you, and then you're going to think there's something wrong with me for following your advice, which was a dead end, which created more poverty in my life and a waste of time and false hope. And it turned out to be that you thought it was okay for me to go through this, and yet, oh no, you value my human rights.